Hello and welcome to this Deep Dive Human Rights Europe podcast. My guest for today is Mona Elswah, and we're going to dive deep into the subject of how democracy is being affected by the rise of social media. As you'll find out, Mona is an excellent person with whom to have such a conversation. Mona is a researcher at the Oxford Internet Institute in the United Kingdom. She's also a former assistant lecturer at Cairo University. Mona, welcome to this podcast.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Mona, to start with, tell us a little bit more about the work of the Oxford Internet Institute.
Okay, in general, we study how, like a combination between computer science and social science. We study how the internet can affect society, and this is how the institute started in 2001. It's still quite new an institute. However, we have researched enough and provided society with enough findings about the internet more than anyone else. We study politics, we study ethics, we study AI, we study different parts of the internet. I study politics more, political communication, in a project run by the institute called Computational Propaganda. We study how politicians all over the world can use social media in particular to manipulate the public opinion. And we study also international interventions in politics using social media as well, such as Russian intervention in the US, for example. And this is what we study in computational propaganda. It has been running now for more than 1.5 years, and it's going to be running for hopefully for more than that. We're studying different cases in different countries all over the world. Now, millions and millions of dollars are being paid for to affect social media platforms. It's now being investigated by the Congress. It's not just us. It's the whole world is now paying attention to social media. It's not just in this year or the last year. It has been going since perhaps the life-changing, I would call it, Arab Spring in 2011, and everyone calling it the Facebook revolutions in the region. And since then, everyone is interested in studying Facebook effects in politics. I don't have exact numbers of studies that has been studying Facebook since then, since 2011, but absolutely it's on the rise and will continue until we figure it out fully, because Facebook and social media in general is so complicated. It's not just one medium like television used to be. It's more complicated than that. We're all involved on social media. It can read you and can change your life in different ways. So absolutely, social media is important and it's worth studying. Of course, it all started in 2011 when we had first the Tunisian revolution, and we have been hearing about Tunisian revolution through Facebook. I wouldn't have known about Tunisian revolutions perhaps that quite well, except for social media. And I absolutely give the credit for social media for raising people's awareness about uprising and even the possibility of saying no to Mubarak's regime back then. We didn't know it's even possible to remove him. So it changed the country, it changed the region, it changed 4 different dictatorships in the region. We're talking about Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Yemen, and it's now still civil war is still on the rise in Syria up to now. And of course, it's not like the most stable region right now, but did it influence it? Absolutely. It changed everything, yes. It tried to mobilize people, and it successfully mobilized millions in a surprising way. So social media has impacted my country, and it's now impacting other countries as well in different ways. So yeah, absolutely, social media is influencing different countries now in different ways, and governments now are using it. Not just in 2011, it was an activist kind of platform. It was free of government intervention. Governments didn't know how to use it. They weren't in the game, but now they are part of the game. They are very good at it. They are spending money and efforts to manipulate it and to dominate it, to make sure that their voice, their agendas are absolutely as clear as activists. And now even activists are not they're not finding their own ways now in social media. Definitely. It's across the world. This is what we study, the computer propaganda. We don't just study the Western societies, but we study it also in different countries. We're going to study in the Arab region. And it's a phenomenon that happens everywhere in different formats. Like, first, for example, in Western societies, you will find something we call bots, which is automated accounts on Twitter or on Facebook that post and pretend to be real human beings. We will find bots more likely on Western societies. In the US, perhaps, we did actually found lots of bots. However, maybe in other countries where perhaps money is an issue, they won't be able to afford millions of dollars to create bots, but perhaps they will hire what we call cyber armies, which there are human beings actually, and they are just, this is their job. They spend hours and hours just posting, controlling social media. This is another phenomenon. So it's everywhere, but in different formats perhaps. But absolutely everyone is considering social media when they plan for political campaigns. Okay, to be clear here, propaganda has been going since the very beginning of humanity. Politicians understand that they need to brainwash people, to manipulate the public opinion, to skew results of elections, and since the very beginning of humanity. However, with computer propaganda now, it's more tricky and it's more hard to detect. For example, in television, and I'm not going to go back to like 100 years ago, I'm talking about like 60, 70 years ago. When you have television, politicians, when they try to propagate using television, you know, as a viewer, or at least you have the sense that this channel has some sort of agenda. For example, if you're a conservative, you will watch a certain channel knowing that this channel fits your beliefs. So you know what a channel's agendas and ideologies, and you know that already. However, in social media, you don't. You're just on Facebook and you just read comments, and you don't even know if they are human beings or not. You don't know if they're trying to manipulate you or not. It's getting more complicated than it is. Regular users are having lots of difficulties of figuring out or even to detect whether it's a bot or a human being, whether it's a junk news or it's a professional news. And again, until now, as researchers, we can't figure this out. And it takes us a lot of effort to figure it out. However, we can. However, in the future, I'm not sure how it's going to take. Will we be able to know a bot from a human user? I don't know, because they get more creative every day. The moment we speak now, maybe creators are thinking of ways to hide more and more. So this is why it's more dangerous than before. Also, with social media, and what makes it a bit difficult and more complicated than traditional media is that it targets you. The algorithm used in social media is created to fit its ads to you. So your Facebook is different. It's absolutely different from my Facebook, even if we like the same page, if we have the same thing. However, the chat you write with your friends can affect algorithm, and at the end, your the ads that you see, the suggestions Facebook will bring to you, for example, would be completely different than mine. It tailors what you see on social media. That this is how it's more difficult to control. It influences democracy in a way that we have never witnessed before in history. We still need to study it. We still need to figure this out. For example, if you're gonna pay like millions of dollars for one ad on on television, that would hopefully would be seen by like perhaps if it was like a very hot day, it would be like million viewer, for example. It would take, hopefully this is like most successful ad perhaps in the world. But on social media, in a moment, one image, one picture, one tweet could go viral in no time with the cheapest amount of money, and it would be there for like as long as it could take until someone deletes it. So social media, this is what makes social media more scary and more effective. I won't say I'm not like I'm gonna panic and I don't like this kind of discourse. However, let's be serious. It's more effective. It's more cheap. It's more it amplifies messages in a way that we have never witnessed before in history. Sure. I will give you an example. I don't know if you're gonna remember it or not, but in Westminster attacks like a year ago, there was this very well-known picture of a Muslim girl wearing hijab, looking at her phone, and she was portrayed as she was ignoring a victim on the street. This picture was tweeted and it went viral in no time. Even newspapers published about it. Later on, we figured out that the actual person who tweeted this image for the very first time was a Russian bot. It wasn't even a human being. So, and it went viral in no time, and I remember it because I later on another frame for the same girl was released where she was actually panicking. So yes, social media is absolutely effective, and it can, for example, if this picture was taken like 40 years ago or 50 years ago on newspaper, it would take like days and days to go viral. Even if, I don't think it would go viral as much as it did these days. So the impact of social media, that it can disseminate one single message for millions in no time, and you can't stop it. You can definitely stop it. And even the funny thing is that it wasn't even by a human being, it was by even a bot that wanted to influence the public opinion against immigrations in the US. First of all, they are now forced to do so. They are now being held accountable for what is being published on their platform. In the past, they weren't. They were just being treated as just a medium, that they're not responsible. It's just the users are responsible. But now they are being held responsible. They are now, it's now being taken seriously than ever before. What they're doing is that now Twitter is suspending some bots and some, but however they can't, and I don't know if they are like able to detect all bots that they have on their platforms or not. And it's going to take, again, bot creators are really getting more smarter, and I don't know if Twitter can like detect them all and suspend them all. And also Facebook is now paying more attention to this phenomenon. However, we still have responsibilities as societies to teach our kids in school that please don't believe everything that you see or read on social media, because it might not even be true. Media literacy is essential when it comes to our responsibilities as civil societies and researchers as well. Our responsibility as researchers, for example, is to let you know that this phenomenon is real, and this is what we do. And when we tell you that this phenomenon is real, you can, as civil societies and even those responsible, to go and to hold social media platforms accountable, and we can do something about it at the end. For example, in Germany now, they have released a recent bill that would fine 50 million for social media platforms who fail to remove fake news or hate speech from their platforms. And they're really, really trying to avoid this big fine. So they are now removing as much as possible of hate speech in Germany. However, I don't know if it's the most effective law so far, because again, when you try to remove content from platforms, you might end up influencing and harming freedom of expression as well, because there is always that blurry line between hate speech and freedom of expression that you might cross while you try to deter social media. I think that now countries are, especially Western countries, of course, are on the line of getting serious, and with social media in the UK now they are aware of the threat that social media could bring to their democracy, and they are now forming somehow regulations and policies to make things more clear in the future. My research can tell you so far there is bots. There is a lot of amount of junk news online that we can't even stop counting so far. But when it comes to international intervention and whoever is making these bots, the findings are absolutely inconclusive, because we can't tell who is making these bots at the end. Is it Russian intervention? Is it political campaigners? We still don't know effectively how much, but what we can tell so far, for example, during the Brexit election, that the Russian intervention was so minimal. Although we thought it wouldn't be, because we always hear that the Russians are really affecting elections everywhere, but we didn't find enough evidence. But again, I'm using the word we didn't find enough evidence. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I don't know. I seriously don't know, and I don't think we can get conclusive results so far. It might exist and we don't know about it. Twitter has actually released above 2,000 accounts related to Russia that intervened in the U.S. elections, and some of these accounts were used in the Brexit as well in other countries. So does it exist? Yes. Its capacity, I don't know. I don't know about it. I don't think we will know in the next few days. But we need to still to investigate about who creates these spots, and this is the hot topic now. We know it exists, but who is making them? We still need to figure this out. I think platforms, social media platforms, somehow can detect bots from human users. So far, again, so far, we don't know the future. Bots usually tweet, for example, on Twitter, they tweet more than 40 and up to 400 tweets per day. This is not a human being. Definitely, if you have the super free life, you can't tweet like 400 tweets per day. So platforms can detect so far bots. They have the algorithm to figure this out. Hopefully, they will suspend more bots. I can't stop people. I'm against absolutely any regulations against, for example, making people register their Facebook accounts and all this crazy stuff that would make and threat democracy more than bots. Because once you regulate people accessing these free social media platforms, you are making a bigger mistake than allowing bots in the first place. I think the Italian school, I think, is now teaching kids how to detect fake news. There are now websites to help you detecting fake news from professional news. People are really taking it seriously, because if not, the internet is really full of junk. I have seen more junk than ever since I started researching culture propaganda. So absolutely, this is so far what we can do. Of course, on governmental level, and this is what Germany did, they should regulate it more and make platforms pushing them to make it taking it more seriously, and by fines, I don't know, by other means. But we should, this is what we can do so far. I don't know, in the future, maybe something else would happen. I don't know. In previous elections, political candidates depended more on polls, like surveys, picking up the phone and asking people whether you're Republican or Democrat, whatever. They depended on polls, which was partially okay, but it wasn't covering everyone. It wasn't like a timely kind of result that we have. But in social media, using data from social media, it can tell you in a second whether your debate with the other candidate was successful or not, which state you need to focus on more, which state you need to target more in order to help you win. We have, for example, the Michigan state, for example, that Trump ended up winning. We have found that Michigan, prior to election day, they have shared more and more junk news than professional news. I don't know, again, I don't know if that helped Trump win. I don't know, but it exists. The junk news were more shareable during that time than professional news. Again, I don't know, and I don't think any researcher would know if the existence of junk news on social media back then in the U.S. elections, and the existence of bots back then was effective and how effective it was in elections. But was it used? Absolutely, it was used. I think populists, yeah, since the very beginning of history as well, have been using media in general to brainwash people. This is their main target. Let's brainwash people. Let's inject the world with conspiracies, as with junk, as since the very beginning of media, actually, as with radio. This happened with radio. It happened with television. It happened with newspapers. Now it's happening with social media. They want to inject this because they don't rely on facts. If they were relying on facts, they weren't using junk at all. This is why they are more likely to use social media, because they depend their campaigns on lies, on junk, on conspiracy theories, on sensationalist, extremist opinions, and they need to brainwash people to make them believe about it and to make them vote for them at the end. I don't think it's getting more important than it is before. People again, and I have seen it being used in different countries throughout the history. I would say, for example, Hitler used emotions to make people do crazy stuff. So playing on emotions, and actually not just emotions and fear. Fear appeal is more effective. When you make people scared, they will give up their civil rights. They will give up their liberties just to get out of the other enemy that you have created in their minds. So this is what have been done with other media. Now is being amplified on social media. We are othering people. We're creating enemies. We are creating, if you're not voting for me, you're getting attacks and terrorists. And we are making enemies that we have never heard of them before. So yeah, it's not as I think it's not a new thing, but it's continuous phenomenon, and it will continue even if the internet died. For example, in the next 100 years or something, it will continue forever. Definitely, it's a game changer. It's again, it's more effective than other medium before. It's more effective. It's accessible to even those who don't have enough money for elections. In the past, to win an election, you had to be very well sponsored, well funded, and to run a massive campaign in order to grab people's attention. Now you don't need that. You just need a laptop and an internet, and you can do that. So it's a game changer because everyone can now be involved, and it's a game changer because we cannot know, and I'm talking about normal users, they can know who is behind this account, and this is a phenomenon that we never had before. In the history of humanity, I would say we had similar stuff maybe in television, on radio, on newspapers, that we may not be able to tell exact agenda of the channel or the newspaper, but we had a sense somehow. But on social media, we don't know. We don't know who is behind it, who is even a human being or not. Twitter, for example, is trying to do is to highlight political accounts, or maybe Facebook would try to highlight political ads that are being paid for. There are some Facebook and Twitter usually will and constantly change their algorithm. So maybe in the future they will, especially during election time, and perhaps in the U.S. or in Europe, they would highlight to people more and more that perhaps this is a political ad, to let people know upfront before being exposed to messages that this what kind of message are being exposed to. I don't know what is going to happen in the future. I don't know. I'm as excited as you are to know in the future what's going to happen with the algorithm of Facebook. But I think Facebook and Twitter now has realized that they will be in a very big problem if they haven't tried to fix this problem on their platforms. I can tell, or anyone can tell, the real impact of using social media as a political campaign in influencing the results of elections. But as I said, what we can tell you so far, that was it used? Yes, absolutely, it was used. In the Brexit, we found that the Brexit team or Brexit hashtags were tweets were more than the stay in tweets. So yes, was influencing the election, the results of the Brexit. I don't know. I seriously don't know. The same thing would happen in other elections. Will it be there? Yes, it would be there, definitely. Even not just in Europe, all over the world. Yes, it would be there. But would it influence the elections? I don't know. I seriously don't know. We need more research. We need to figure out this out absolutely in future research. Blaming social media, or not just I'm not going to use the word blaming, but giving the credit for social media for someone's win on elections, and that's it, is absolutely silly. We can't just give credit for social media only as the only factor that would lead to the win or loss of someone in any election in the world. The same thing happened with the Arab Spring. I would call that, they were calling it the Facebook revolution, that without Facebook, that the Arab Spring would never happened before. No, it doesn't work like that. Was it a factor? Yes, it was. It was social media factor in Trump's wedding, perhaps. And why it is less important in Europe? I wouldn't say it's not less important, but I would say it's a capacity, or maybe the highlight and the coverage of its influence is less covered by media in general than the whole dilemma that happened in the U.S. We are bringing it, that the attention was brought more to the U.S. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist in Europe. It exists not only in Europe. Again, it's everywhere. I don't know if it would eventually would affect the results in Europe. I don't know, but I can absolutely we can't say that social media is the only factor in winning or losing any campaign. It's one of the factors, yes, but among the many other factors, the charisma of the politician is important. His reputation is important. Who was president before him is important as well. Was it Republican or was it a Democrat? What party was it? The economy of the country at the moment is important. Different factors are absolutely important. Not just social media is all factors. No, it's just a medium to spread messages, to inform people, to make it more, the messages more communicative. But it can't get all the credit. It's not doable. Definitely, it won't be much different than it is right now. It would be more complicated, I would say, but social media would still be used by campaigners to make sure they have the upper hand on it. They want to control, they want to dominate the sphere of social media. However, I have the fear that it would be less detectable. Their involvement, their intervention would be less detectable than it is right now. I hope this won't be the version of the future that I'm drawing. I hope that many regulations would be actually implemented to stop this before it actually happens. I hope people would have more knowledge about it and be able to detect bots and fake news, and to be able to say, no, I'm not going to share that to my friends. This is fake. This is dangerous. I shouldn't be doing that. I hope things would change, but again, as I said, it would be the same effect right now, but more, perhaps more less detectable than it is at the moment. If you're gonna having the digital version of debates that we used to see on television, we have another version now called hashtags on Twitter. You will find the same exact attention being brought on Twitter for debates on television. I remember during Hillary and Trump debates, I was following the hashtags, and it was as live and as interactive, even more than interesting than the debates. So people are debating, but in different ways of social media. So the fights have been brought now to platforms, and people are absolutely fighting. People are now even unfriending each other because of political disagreements. I know people are blocking each other now because they are pro or against a specific candidate. So the fight now is digital. It's now on social media. It will never stop until something magical would happen. First of all, if you want to make sure that your democracy won't be influenced by social media, make sure that you are practicing democracy from the first place in your country. If you are making sure that everyone has freedom of expression, there is absolutely no intervention and censorship somehow, you will have democracy at the end of the day in your elections. Also, make sure to educate your country and make sure that you are raising people's awareness. The effect of propaganda is much worse when you are discussing it or you're trying to influence people who are illiterate. It's much worse than trying to brainwash people who are educated. This is why some people can tell that this is a fake news, and some people absolutely would never be able to tell that this is a fake news or not because of education. So if you want to make sure that your democracy won't be influenced, educate your citizens. Make sure they know the truth up front. And of course, transparency is important. If governments are absolutely transparent with their citizens, we will never find WikiLeaks releases. We will never have files that would be released by Twitter bots and telling you your president or your politician is corrupted. So transparency is also important, and of course, at the end, regulations, and not just written regulations are not being implemented. You have to make sure that these regulations are clear and they are implemented, and people are held accountable for what they publish at the end of the day. So there are four things that we can do as societies and as governments to make sure that the effect of social media won't be the end of democracy in the world.
Mona Elswah, thank you.
Thank you so much.